Hi, Women Against Feminism. Shani here, and I hope I'm not going to scare anybody. Um, I haven't been very well, and I've also been up all night talking to people about something that actually affects me more than I have cared to admit in the past. So my heart is beating out of my chest because I'm a little bit scared to talk about it. Um, As you would know, the subject of single mothers has come up in the group a fair few times recently, and it's been a difficult one for us to discuss. I understand that a lot of men are angry about the subject. I don't really think that their anger is constructive a lot of the time. I think that we do need to hear about why they wouldn't want to date single mothers. And I know that just saying that makes a lot of other women, especially single mothers, angry as well. So I'm probably going to cop quite a lot from every angle here. But we need to put a human face to this. The men who are affected by this, they have a human face whether they've been expressing that in the most desirable manner or not. And the same is true for women. So, having said that, I'm going to, if I can catch my breath, I don't often get like this anymore, but it's a really emotional topic. Not least of all because I have 3 sons. So I can understand how this subject affects men by thinking about how I would feel if my sons came home with a woman who already had children to another man. Do you understand what I mean by that? I think that when women are often thinking about the issue of being a single mother and dating again, we're thinking about it entirely from our own perspective. But if we have sons, how would we feel if the son came home with a woman who already had 3 children to a previous man, or perhaps 3 previous men? And I know the answer really depends on what she is like as an individual, what he's like as an individual, but is this what you want for your son? If I'm honest, it's not what I want for my son. But of course, at the same time, I've been a single mother. I was I was 19 when I met the father of my children, and I'd been living with my mother. And forgive me if I do get emotional. She was abusive, and there was this incident where she was throwing plates and police were called, and it was awful. And I had absolutely nowhere to stay. Excuse. If anybody knows what a narcissistic parent is like, it's very hard on your self-esteem. And so I didn't just have nowhere to stay. I also had a hole. It was a self-esteem issue. I just wanted to be loved. And, 19 years old, I had been a surf lifesaver. I grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney, which is sort of like the Valley Girls of LA, California. The girls that you see on the beach in the bikinis, and I was one of those girls. And I I was, of course, just one girl among a whole sea of girls, and I wanted to feel pretty and I wanted to feel special. And so I met the father of my children when I was actually quite homeless. And he absolutely adored me. And he was stable. And it was exactly what I was looking for. He worshipped me. He loved me. He was also 19 years older than me. Keep in mind that I have to tell my children this now, and I'm very aware that it's a shameful thing to say. I see it in their eyes when as little kids do, they ask you, how old are you, mummy? Or what year were you born in? And then they ask daddy, and you can see it. There's this moment where they do the math, and then this look comes over their face like, why? They weren't expecting that. I mean, it doesn't hurt that the father doesn't look anything like 19 years older than me, but the fact remains that he is 19 years older than me, and this came back to haunt me. When I was 19, making that choice, and I did make the choice to be with him. Of course, I can talk about being homeless and wanting to be loved, but there were all these other opportunities that I had, and I turned those opportunities down in order to be with him. And that's what these men are talking about when they talk about judgment. I made a judgment that turned out to have consequences that were severe for myself and my family, for myself and the children at least, and for Ross. That's the father of my children, Ross. I can't blame anybody else for the decision that I made. That was my choice. It didn't occur to me at the time that being 19 years older than me and being a tradesman, that he could get sick. But my oldest son was about 6. Our oldest son was about 6, and the baby, our third son, had just been born when he got incredibly sick. And it's not that odd for a tradesman to get sick like that. And when I'd been sick earlier, he was able to carry me, literally. And when he got sick, I wasn't able to do anything like that. I wasn't even able to call him an ambulance. He, like many men, they don't want to be cared for. They don't want to be thinking of themselves as sick. And I saw him as like the boss and the authority. So when he screamed at me not to call him an ambulance, I did as I was told. And that's not abusive screaming. That's just, when you're really unwell and you just, you see it with children. If you're a mother, when your children aren't well, they just get aggravated. And that's what Ross was like. And I just felt absolutely helpless in that state. The baby was losing weight because I was losing milk. Ross was getting sicker. The older boys were really starting to behave badly. I was not coping. We weren't coping, and I wasn't coping. And Ross's mother was a nurse. She'd been a nurse for a long time, and so she wanted to put a bed up in her lounge room and have Ross go and stay there. And so I went and stayed with my mother, not for very long, because of course that wasn't much of an option. So you can see
powering off.
You can see where the vulnerable single mother thing happens. I can see where the vulnerable single mother thing happens. So there I was at my mother's, and needing to get out of there again with 3 young children. And I was single for 4 years at least. It was more like 5 years. And I was looking for other men at that time. I was still taking the kids every weekend to see their father. But he'd said some things when he was unwell that, people say these things when they're going through a breakup. And I'd said some things that had just obliterated the relationship, that it just seemed like there was never going to be any way that he and I could reconcile or live together again. We all thought, this is such an awful thing to say, we all thought that he was going to die. The doctors thought he was... Sorry. So I was scared for my future, and I was scared for my son's future. But I didn't have any confidence at all. I didn't feel like I had anything to offer a man. And maybe it's better to say that I realised I didn't have anything to offer a man except dependence. My own dependence and the dependence of 3 young children. I didn't sleep. If it matters to anybody, I didn't sleep with any other men during that time. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't was because I didn't have a babysitter. And you can't really, unless you want to be a terrible mother for your children, you can't be in the sort of situation where you're going to be meeting a man and getting it on with him while your 3 children are in the other room watching Lion King. That's not something I wanted, and I'm not sorry if that's something that other single mothers have done. I can't apologize for that. I can only do what I did. But I did start to meet men after about 4 years of living at my mother's and living at 2 refuges. And it was just when I started to get to like a guy that my brother offered us a place to move interstate. And then I was faced with the option of not being able to take the kids to see their father every weekend at least. And that hammered me, because I'd been raised by my own father myself. My mother left when my younger brother and I were about the same age that my older 2 boys were. And it wasn't something that I could do. So we all moved interstate. The father came with us, and it was supposed to be temporary. It was really hard at first, but it became apparent that it didn't work financially to have 2 separate households. It just didn't work. And so I was faced with a choice of the father going back to his mother's place, or the children and the children not seeing their father and him not seeing the children. and that didn't seem like a viable option. And so we moved back together, and we still all live together here. And there's all sorts of reasons why that's a problem for a lot of other people, but it works for us. And so just talking about why I couldn't move the kids away from their father and, separate that bond, it makes me think back to when our first son was born, and there's a photo of our first son on his first day of life, and his father's holding him in his arms, and the look of love on his father's face is just, it's a powerful thing. I loved that man. I do still love that man as the father of our children. And our son is just so peaceful and happy, all curled up like little newborn babies do. It just didn't seem like something that was, I don't want to guilt trip anybody, but it's not something that I could do to separate them. And he wanted to be there for the children, of course. But that brings me to another reason why men don't want to be with single mothers. They don't want to take on a single mother. It's certainly not their first preference, and that's because of paternity anxiety. There's two things going on there. One, they want to have their own children, and there's nothing wrong with that. They want to know what it's like to be a biological parent to a child. And we don't want to lose out on that, do we? We would feel absolutely devastated if people told us that women couldn't be mothers, that we couldn't be biological mothers of our own children. It's just not it wouldn't even register in the public consciousness. And yet that's essentially what we're saying to men when we tell them that they should put up, just accept single mothers as their lot in life and never know biological fatherhood themselves. There is another reason. It's something I can actually relate to, because when we give birth to a baby, we know that that baby is ours. But when a father's holding the baby, he doesn't have that same connection to know that it came from him. Oh, that's Russ. One moment, sorry. Hi, I'm doing a video. Thank you. No, I'll do another 20 minutes at most. Thank you. Apologies about that. There's an interesting story that I'm just going to touch on briefly. When I had our first baby, he was born under general anaesthetic and via cesarean. And when I woke up from the general anaesthetic, I refused to hold my baby. The thing that I said to the nurse and to Ross was holding the baby and trying to give me that first cuddle, and I wouldn't touch him. I said, how do I know that's my baby? Because I wasn't there, and Ross wasn't there either. And so I think that must be exactly what a man must feel like if he doesn't have that certainty that he has fathered that child. And it's not like I wouldn't love a baby, but that moment when they brought the baby to me and like, here, uh, this is yours to love and hold and care for all of their life. My first thought was rejection. And I'm incredibly ashamed about that, and I wouldn't suggest that it's a good way to go for anybody, but I'm also convinced that it's a biological thing, and it's something that we should understand and at least have compassion for men, because they don't get to experience that. They don't have that certainty. And with my first baby, our first baby, it was only because the baby had physical traits that were exactly the same as his father's that I knew that the baby was ours. And it was only when I saw those that the nurse unwrapped the baby, and he's got inverted nipples that are exactly like his father's. And they're, plenty of people have inverted nipples, but not many have them like angled like that, like a. So that was when I actually held him for the first time and knew that he was mine, and knew that everything was going to be okay. And everything was okay, really, for me. But if I'd made a different decision, I'd be out there looking for love and trying to convince men that I'm worthy of their trust. And it would be a difficult thing for me to ask them to trust me if I'd made those decisions, I think. I mean, I understand when they say that they don't want to take on a single mother because they question her judgment. That doesn't give anybody a right to go bashing single mothers. I don't think it helps anybody at all. Certainly there were some people in one of the threads in Women Against Feminism earlier, and maybe their first language isn't English and maybe they didn't understand, but I said it's not as if a woman is dead once her hymen is broken, because they were talking about women needing to be virgins in order to, get married, and therefore they're awful people, and and he said it's exactly like they're dead when their hymen is broken, and that didn't make any sense to me. Why would a woman want to marry a man who says that? Because it's like he would pump and dump her on their wedding night. I think what he meant was that he wouldn't marry a woman who wasn't a virgin, and then once they're married it's okay because it's for life. But what I was trying to say is that they're not dead. You've still got to treat them like humans. It doesn't matter if you don't want to be with them. That's absolutely fine. Everybody can make a choice about who they're with, right? We just got to remember that we have to live with those choices. And that's what I want women to understand. I'm 43 now. I've been really unwell, and age is the great revealer. When you start to get unwell and you're a bit old, you start to look not too appealing. And it's a scary thing to think that you'd. I mean, it is scary. I'd have to be honest. I want to be pretty. I want to be desired, and to say anything else is an absolute lie. Of course, I want to be valued for other things. I want to be valued for my mind and contributing to society and contributing to a better concept of family. I want to contribute to law reform. It's not like I just want to be seen as a princess and worshipped and loved just for looking pretty, but I still want to look pretty. And I'm 43, it's not going to happen anymore. I'm not 19 anymore. I made the choices when I was young, when I had that, when I had a lot of different people who were interested. And I can't say that I regret my choice. And it's not just because I got 3 gorgeous kitties out of it. Regardless, I made my choice, and that's that. And I have to live with it. And so do my kids. Our kids. I noticed there's no questions there, and maybe you've got some questions and you just want to write them down for later, and that's okay. I've got to go out. Otherwise Ross is going to come and knock on the door again. But I'll be looking on my phone, and I'd like to hear from some more single mothers, I think. Nobody's been in here giving me a whole ton of hate. I think people are genuinely interested to hear how we got where we were, why we made the choices we made, and what we expect to happen now. So I'd really like to see your videos. Thank you.